There are moments in pop culture when a name stops being simply popular and becomes impossible to ignore. For Jungkook, one of those moments appears to be happening again. In 2026, the youngest member of BTS has reportedly risen to the top of a major social media conversation, becoming one of the most talked about artists on X. And what makes this achievement especially striking is not simply the name Jungkook, it is the names surrounding him. Michael Jackson, Drake. Two artists from completely different generations, with enormous legacies and audiences of their own. Yet according to a report from Vietnamese media outlet Lao Dong, Jungkook has taken the leading position in the conversation on X, placing his name above these global music giants. For fans who have followed Jungkook from his earliest days with BTS, this is more than just another number on a list. It feels like another chapter in a transformation that has been happening in front of the world. Because Jungkook was not introduced to the world as a solo superstar. He began as the youngest member of BTS, a young performer growing alongside 6 other members, learning how to stand on enormous stages, facing the pressure of global attention, and slowly discovering what kind of artist he wanted to become. Now, years later, his name can generate enormous attention, even when the conversation is not specifically about BTS. That distinction matters. BTS created one of the biggest global musical movements of the modern era. But Jungkook has increasingly demonstrated that he can carry attention on his own. And social media may be one of the clearest places to see that evolution. On X, conversations can explode within minutes. A photograph can become a worldwide topic. A performance can trigger thousands of reactions. A song can send fans from one country into conversation with fans from another. And an artist who already possesses a massive global following can suddenly become the center of an international digital wave. Jungkook has repeatedly shown an ability to create exactly that kind of reaction. His name has become almost synonymous with digital momentum. Every appearance, every musical project, every photograph, and even seemingly small moments can become material for global discussion. But behind those numbers is something much more human. Millions of people are choosing to talk about him. They are sharing his performances. They are celebrating his achievements. They are replaying his music. They are creating edits, posts, discussions, and trends. And that is where the strength of the global BTS fandom, particularly ARMY, becomes impossible to overlook. The power is not simply in how many people follow Jungkook. It is in how quickly those people can turn attention into a worldwide conversation. And there is another detail that makes this story even more remarkable. Jungkook's digital influence is not limited to X. His name has already become enormous across other platforms. In 2026, his personal hashtag Jungkook, was reported to have passed 400 billion views on TikTok. That number is almost difficult to comprehend. It represents an extraordinary level of repeated attention surrounding a single artist. And it tells us something important. Jungkook's popularity is not dependent on one platform. It travels. From music streaming services to short-form video, from fan communities to global social networks, from BTS discussions to his own solo identity, his name continues to move. And perhaps that is why this latest achievement feels different. Because Jungkook is no longer simply participating in the global conversation. He is increasingly becoming one of the people defining it. But there is still a much bigger question hiding behind this achievement. How did the youngest member of BTS reach a point where his name could stand above artists whose influence has shaped entire generations? To understand that, we have to look beyond one ranking, and into Jungkook's evolution as an artist. The most fascinating part of Jungkook's story may be that his solo identity did not appear overnight. It was built gradually. For years, the world knew him primarily as Jungkook of BTS, the Golden Maknae, the youngest member, the singer whose voice could move effortlessly between powerful performances and emotional melodies. But as BTS members began developing their individual artistic identities, something became increasingly clear. Jungkook had a global presence that could exist beyond the group. His solo career provided the opportunity to test that idea. and then came 7. The song became one of the defining moments of his solo journey. Rather than depending entirely on the BTS name, Jungkook stepped forward as an individual artist and reached an international audience through music that was designed to live beyond the boundaries of K-pop. That was significant, because becoming a successful solo artist after belonging to a globally dominant group is not easy. There is enormous expectation. Fans already have an image of you. The industry already has expectations for you. And the question is always there. Can you make people listen when the group name is no longer the first thing they see? Jungkook's career has increasingly answered that question. Yes, he can. And the latest social media achievement adds another layer to that answer. Because being talked about is not the same as simply being famous. Conversation means attention. It means people are reacting, people are discussing, people are curious, people are emotionally invested. And that is precisely what makes the comparison with Michael Jackson and Drake so striking. Michael Jackson's name represents one of the greatest legacies in popular music. His influence reached far beyond songs. His dance, his music videos, his performances, his fashion, his stage presence. His entire artistic identity changed the way pop stars were perceived. Drake, meanwhile, represents another era of global dominance. His career has stretched across years of changing musical trends, streaming culture, social media, and digital fandom. He became one of the defining artists of the modern music industry. So when Jungkook appears above names like these in a measure of social media conversation, it should not be interpreted as a replacement of their musical legacies. It is something different. It represents the power of a new kind of global celebrity. A celebrity whose influence can be measured not only through albums or television appearances, but through the speed and scale of online conversation. This is the era where a fandom can become a media force, where fans in Seoul can create a trend that reaches Los Angeles within minutes, where fans in Jakarta, Paris, London, Manila, New York, and countless other cities can participate in the same conversations simultaneously. And Jungkook sits at the center of that ecosystem. His rise also reflects something larger about K-pop. The global expansion of Korean entertainment has changed what an international superstar can look like. Years ago, a Korean artist achieving worldwide recognition was treated as an extraordinary exception. Today, Korean artists are competing for attention on the same digital platforms as the biggest names in Western music. BTS played a historic role in opening that door, and Jungkook has become one of the artists walking through it as an individual. That is why his journey from BTS's youngest member to global solo figure is so compelling. He is not abandoning where he came from. Instead, he is building something alongside it. The BTS identity remains a fundamental part of his story, but Jungkook's own name now carries enormous weight. And perhaps the clearest evidence is what happens when he is not even actively trying to dominate the conversation. His fandom keeps the conversation alive. A photograph can revive attention. An old performance can suddenly trend again. A song can be rediscovered by millions. A single moment can become a global topic. That kind of cultural momentum is extremely difficult to manufacture. It has to be earned. And Jungkook appears to have earned it over years of work. But if his position on X shows how powerful his present influence has become, his previous records reveal that this is not a sudden phenomenon. And that brings us to the trail of digital milestones that has followed him for years.
Jungkook's latest achievement on X is only one chapter in a much longer digital story. Long before the 2026 conversation, his name was already producing extraordinary numbers across social media. Back in 2021, one of his posts was reported among the most liked tweets in Twitter history. That was significant at the time because it demonstrated something that would become increasingly obvious. Jungkook could generate extraordinary engagement simply through his presence. Then came TikTok. The hashtag Jungkook became a phenomenon of its own. In 2022, reports indicated that the hashtag had already surpassed 100 billion views, and now in 2026, the figure has reportedly climbed beyond 400 billion. The scale of that growth tells its own story. This is not a single viral moment. It is sustained attention. Generation after generation of fans, new listeners discovering his music, longtime armies supporting him, and casual viewers becoming curious about the artist behind the name. That is how an online legacy is built, and it also explains why the comparison with Michael Jackson and Drake deserves careful attention. The music industry has changed dramatically. Michael Jackson's greatest era existed before social media could instantly measure public conversation. Drake rose during the transition into streaming and digital culture. Jungkook has emerged in a world where fandom itself has become part of the communication system. The audience does not simply consume the artist anymore. They participate, they amplify, they respond, they create communities around the artist. And Jungkook's ability to thrive within that environment has made him one of the most visible Korean celebrities on the planet. But perhaps the most emotional part of this story is remembering where that journey began. A young Jungkook once stood on stage as the youngest member of a group that was still fighting for its place in the industry. Nobody could know exactly how far BTS would go. Nobody could predict that these 7 young men would eventually become a global cultural force, and nobody could know that the youngest among them would one day see his own name placed alongside some of the biggest artists in music history. Today, Jungkook is not simply being discussed because he is a member of BTS. He is being discussed because he has become Jungkook, an artist with his own songs, his own audience, his own records, and his own place in global pop culture. That does not erase the legacy of Michael Jackson. It does not diminish Drake. And it certainly does not mean that a social media ranking can measure the full artistic impact of any musician, but it does reveal something powerful about the present moment. The world is paying attention to Jungkook, and when millions of people decide to speak about the same artist at the same time, that attention becomes a cultural force of its own. The youngest member of BTS has grown into something much larger than the title he was once given. He has become a global solo name. And if his digital records continue to rise, this may not be the peak of his story. It may only be another sign of what is still ahead. Jungkook's reported position at the top of the 2026 X conversation is not simply a headline about defeating 2 famous names. It is a snapshot of how global entertainment has changed. Michael Jackson represents a legendary era when pop stars could become cultural institutions. Drake represents the modern era of streaming, digital music, and global celebrity, and Jungkook represents something increasingly powerful in between music, fandom, and social media. His journey shows how an artist can grow from being part of a legendary group into a global figure with an identity of his own. The numbers surrounding him, from the reported attention on X to the enormous reach of #Jungkook on TikTok, suggest that his influence is not confined to one country, one language, or even one generation. But perhaps numbers are not the most meaningful part of this story. The real story is the people behind them, the fans who stayed, the listeners who discovered him later, the people who watched one performance and decided to press replay, the communities that continue to make his name visible around the world. That is what turns popularity into something deeper. And that is why Jungkook's latest milestone feels less like a finish line and more like another turning point. From the youngest member of BTS, to a successful solo artist, to one of the most talked about names in global digital culture. His journey is still unfolding, and for everyone who has watched him grow, perhaps the most exciting question is no longer whether Jungkook can reach the top. It is how much further he can go once he is already there. If you have followed Jungkook from his BTS days to his solo era, then you know this story is about more than a ranking. It is about watching an artist grow in real time. And if this latest milestone means something to you, tell us which Jungkook era made you realize that he had truly become a global star